All right. If any of you have any trouble hearing me, just do the old Carol Burnett thing, take the earlobe. And, but be sure I'm looking at you when you do this so I can know. On the 24th of June, 2022, the Supreme Court sent shockwaves throughout this country. Their Dobbs decision overturned Roe v. Wade and ended 49 and a half years that either guaranteed women control over their own bodies or instituted state-sponsored infanticide, depending on your point of view. On Facebook, which is, of course, the biggest cult in the world, as I have said many times, angry people who disagreed with the decision blamed Christians for the situation and started calling for the government to tax the churches. In vain did I point out that plenty of sincere Christians also disagreed with the Dobbs decision, and it didn't do any good to mention that taxing the churches would only hurt the people the churches do actually help. English translation, that means poor people, folks. In the end, I got so fed up with the whole business that I had to unfriend at least one person over it. You see, she expected me to let her express her opinion, which is her right, of course, but expected me not to express mine if it was different from hers, which it was. What's sauce for the goose? On the 7th of March, 1965, the peaceful protesters in the Civil Rights March on Selma, Alabama, were attacked by police forces on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in a series of events so violent that a shocked America started calling the day Bloody Sunday. John Lewis, the civil rights leader turned member of the Georgia delegation to the National House of Representatives, was on the bridge that Bloody Sunday, and he was beaten up. When Lewis died in 2020, there were renewed calls to rename the Edmund Pettus Bridge after him, but a number of civil rights leaders in Selma disagreed, and so did I. A good friend of mine from my days with the Kernersville Little Theater couldn't understand, as she put it, why I wanted to continue honoring Pettus, a Confederate general and avowed white supremacist. I told her I wasn't honoring the man, anything but. I wanted to ensure that the name of Edmund Pettus would continue to be enshrined in the infamy that attached to it on that Bloody Sunday. And the way to do that was to rename not the bridge, but the road. US 80 route business, the road which crosses that bridge after John Lewis. Think of the symbolic value. The John Lewis Parkway would forever cross over the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Talk about having your last word. By the way, having agreed to disagree, the second woman and I are still friends, both in person and on Facebook. And we're both still Christians. At any rate, the fallout from the Dobbs decision got me to thinking again about a fundamental problem that I had been working on and off for some years. Our specific version of it is, how do we Quakers draw the line between things like our historic role in the Underground Railroad or the black church's leadership role in the civil rights movement on the one hand, and so-called Christian nationalism on the other? We need to articulate the difference between the two beyond just saying that we agree with the one, but not the other. All right, this is where I get all theological on you. How many of you know what a hermeneutical key is? Not even Marcy. I have Marcy speechless, folks. It's almost as good as having me speechless.
Please say it again.
A hermeneutical key.
Will you spell it for us?
Hermeneutical.
Can you use it in a sentence?
Yeah.
A hermeneutical key is a theological term which means an interpretative principle. There's your sentence. Okay, I saw all your eyes start glazing over as soon as I said the word theological. When I attended the meeting in Friargate in the ancient English city of York, James Howson, who was one of the guys I knew there, used to say that, and I quote, this is a direct quote by the way, God made man made the devil, and the devil made theology. But bear with me here. There's a principle with deep roots, ancient roots in Judaism, where it's called pikuach nefesh, which literally means saving a living soul or saving a life. What this means in practice is that, with some exceptions, if there's a conflict between fulfilling a commandment and saving a life, you save the life. This derives primarily from a verse in Leviticus. You shall therefore keep my statutes and my ordinances, by doing which a man shall live. I am the Lord, which is Leviticus 18:5. Or there's Deuteronomy 30, verses 15 and 16, which read, See, I have set before you this day life and good, and death and evil. If you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you this day, by loving the Lord your God, by walking in his ways, and by keeping his commandments and his statutes and his ordinances, then you shall live and multiply, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land which you are entering to take possession of it. Ezekiel 20:11 is similar. I gave them my statutes and showed them my ordinances, by whose observance man shall live. The Talmudic sage Shmuel of Nehardea in Babylonia, who lived at the turn of the 3rd century, interpreted these verses to mean live by them, that is God's commandments, but do not die by them, rather than the alternative interpretation, which is live by them and die by them. Rabbinical Judaism still follows Mar Shmuel on this point, which was known in what we now call the Jesus movement, or earliest Christianity, 200 years before Rabbi Shmuel lived. Paul certainly knew of pikuach nefesh, the duty to preserve life. We know this because he refers to it explicitly in places like Romans 7:10 when he says, the very commandment which promised life proved to be death to me. It's also very likely that Jesus knew of this principle as well. The writers of the Gospels certainly thought he did. Witness Mark chapter 2, verses 23 to 28. One Sabbath he was going through the grain fields, and as they made their way, his disciples began to pluck heads of grain. And the Pharisees said to him, Look, why are they doing what is not lawful on the Sabbath? And he said to them, Have you never read what David did when he was in need and was hungry, he and those who were with him, how he entered the house of God when Abiathar was high priest, and ate the bread of the presence, which it is not lawful for any but the priests to eat, and also gave it to those who were with him? And he said to them, The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. The principle is clear enough. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Simple human need takes precedence over most other considerations, especially the more ceremonial requirements of our religion. This is exactly the conclusion to which Rabbi Shmuel came 200 years later, even though debates on the matter were still going on during the lifetime of Jesus. This is also precisely the point of parables like the Good Samaritan, in which the hero of the story acts more righteously than the two representatives of the temple establishment, even though their social class, on the whole, despised him for his ancestry. Sound uncomfortably familiar? In any age, the place of the church is at the side of the poor, the downtrodden, and the oppressed. A meme I came across on Facebook recently, and yes, I do realize that that isn't the best place to find inspiration. But anyway, this meme has this to say on the subject. It's not the task of the church to make America, or I might add any other country for that matter, great again. The contemporary task of the church is to make Christianity countercultural again. And once we unfetter Jesus from the interests of empire, we begin to see just how countercultural and radical Jesus' ideas really are. Enemies? Love them. Violence? Renounce it. Money? Share it. Foreigners? Welcome them. Sinners? Forgive them. These are the kind of radical ideas that will always be opposed by the principalities and powers, but which the followers of Jesus are called to embrace, announce, and enact. There's no room in the kingdom of God for the oppression of others. 2 short months ago, this was our anthem. Truly he taught us to love one another. His law is love, and his gospel is peace. Chains shall he break, for the slave is our brother, and in his name all oppression shall cease. Helping enslaved black people escape to freedom. Hiding Jews from almost certain death at the hands of the Nazis, working for the emancipation of women. All of these are in concert with Jesus' teaching and the rich Jewish heritage out of which he arose. Forcing a woman who's been raped to place her mental health, her physical well-being, and even her financial state in jeopardy by having to carry her attacker's unborn child to term is to ignore her needs in favor of his, or his unborn child's, and this is in concert with neither the teachings of Jesus nor the weight of his and our Jewish heritage. In closing, I'd like to leave you with the following words, which are taken from Dr. King's 1964 Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech. It isn't as well known, perhaps, as his I Have a Dream speech from the year previous, but it does show how religion, at its best, can inspire us. I refuse to accept despair as the final response to the ambiguities of history. I refuse to accept the idea that the isness of man's present nature makes him morally incapable of reaching up for the eternal oughtness that forever confronts him. I refuse to accept the idea that man is mere flotsam and jetsam in the river of life, unable to influence the unfolding events which surround him. I refuse to accept the view that mankind is so tragically bound to the starless midnight of racism and war that the bright daybreak of peace and brotherhood can never become a reality. I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. This is why right temporarily defeated is stronger than evil triumphant. I believe that even amid today's mortar bursts and whining bullets, there is still hope for a brighter tomorrow. I believe that wounded justice lying prostrate on the blood-flowing streets of our nations, can be lifted from this dust of shame to reign supreme among the children of men. I have the audacity to believe that peoples everywhere can have 3 meals a day for their bodies, education and culture for their minds, and dignity, equality, and freedom for their spirits. I believe that what self-centered men have torn down, men other-centered can build up. I still believe that one day mankind will bow before the altars of God and be crowned triumphant over war and bloodshed, and nonviolent redemptive good will proclaim the rule of the land. And the lion and the lamb shall lie down together, and every man shall sit under his own vine and fig tree, and none shall be afraid. I still believe that we shall overcome. Amen.